This is the Rodney Bull Show, bringing you truth about money they never taught you. Now, here's your host, the man himself, Rodney Bull.
G'day, and what's cracking, money stackers? Welcome back, listeners, and thank you for tuning in to the Rodney Bull Show again. Today I'm sharing the rest of my yarn with fraud education specialist Michael Callan, as promised. We'll pick up the conversation where we left off from last week, talking about how to use credit cards for the greatest benefit and how critical cash is here in Australia and around the world. In case you missed last week's episode, we will link it below so you can check it out there. Mick is such an interesting bloke and was so good to talk to, and I hope you listen to the rest of our yarn as much as I enjoyed speaking with him. So no further ado, let's get right back into it, eh?
And every time I pull the credit card out, I wasn't giving money to charities or anything. You know, the old, give me $10, buy a ticket, something like that. Haven't done that for ages because I don't carry cash. Someone's coming around this afternoon with $125 to buy something off me in cash. And I said to him, fine, but I ain't got change, mate. So bring $125. That changed our finances to the positive because we weren't concerned about the credit card, racking up a credit card debt. Well, you did, but it was the bank was holding it. And as long as you stayed in the interest-free zone, it was just, you weren't even paying a service fee on it.
Yeah.
So that's where you got
good and well if you can manage it right, Mick, but how many people do?
Well, they don't hand out credit cards anymore. They hand out debit cards. So my business has not got a credit card. It's got a debit card. We still got our original credit card from 38 years ago when we first got married, 39. So we first got married. We still have a credit card. We still use it. It regularly gets flogged, pays it off, every couple of weeks. We have a constant cash flow, positive cash flow. That's using the banks against themselves.
Yeah, if you learn how to operate it properly. So it comes down to education. But, for the flip side of that, Mick, I like cash myself personally. And I think there's some really good upsides to cash, and they're trying to take it away from us. And I think it's going to be a very problematic world to live in without cash.
You can't. And my travels around Europe, using a credit card is not as convenient as it is in Australia. Nowhere near. We're very convenient here in Australia because we're homogenous. So just remember, this is a homogenous country. There might be 6 states and 2 territories, but essentially we're all the same people. Okay. Yeah. As much as we have a go at the Western Australians, they're still Australians. Go to Europe, that's a different party. I'm going to tell you right now. So I recently flew into Bulgaria to do some work with their financial intelligence service.
Yeah, I remember actually we had a chat while you were over there trying to set up this podcast.
Yeah. Completely different place to play. So I had to carry cash with me because I didn't know whether or not they accepted credit cards. So I carried cash. This is this whole thing. You can't take cash away out of the economy because it does transact outside the formalised economy. It transacts into the informal economy that we have out there, the marketplace where second-hand goods are sold. Yeah. What they call the grey market, where second-hand goods are sold between punters. Like this afternoon, I've got a guy coming. He's going to give me $125. That whole process would die. Unless you're carrying your square around with you. Nobody
Don't say that too loud, Mick, that you're going to get that $125, mate. The government will be pretty sad that they're not going to get their cut of it.
Yeah, they get their cut of it. They don't need to worry about that crap. I pay enough tax.
You and me both.
But again, it comes down to you cannot have an environment, especially with our older generations who are not IT literate. So this is one of the major issues around this is we've actually increased a fraud vulnerability for our older Australians by forcing them down a path they're not prepared.
Massively so. And sadly, them people who are at very vulnerable point in their life and, they only have a certain amount of money to live on, and a lot of them are on a pension, which is not even in existence. It's disgraceful what people who have worked all their lives and paid taxes all their lives end up being given as a pittance of an excuse to exist on. But they're the people that are really getting preyed upon.
Yeah,
and they're the people that least can afford to get preyed upon. I mean, nobody can really afford it, but they definitely can't.
yeah, and again, so what we're doing is, and I'm not sure if it's deliberate or it's just ignorance or it's a thought out process. So
I think it's
I
all of
come
the
along,
above myself, Mick.
I think a bit from all three columns. Yeah, uh, I'm going to reduce the ability to access cash, which would frighten a lot of people that were born in the 30s and 40s. So they'll go and pull cash out of the system and hide it somewhere, which means that their energy's been depleted because inflation's going to get on top of it. At the same time, we're then making it difficult because of fraudsters. We're making it difficult for them to access on things like online banking. It took me ages to get comfortable with that, but you people will not be comfortable with that. So, for instance, Gina's mother had Gina do all the online banking for her.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair enough. Well, what if she didn't have Gina?
No,
So,
that's right.
so,
And then she went and
so, so
asked somebody else, and then that's when she gets preyed on.
yeah, I've got MyGov. Okay, MyGov allows me to access services through MyGov. I can tell you, MyGov's not the most intuitive piece of work you've ever done, and if you've ever had to do your own BAS statement through the bloody thing, it's a pain in the ass.
Mm-hmm.
But you're asking people in their 80s and 90s to learn a new skill that is pretty difficult for people in their 30s and 40s,
Yeah, definitely.
and therefore their access to services is now limited, or they've got to pick up the phone. And the dropout rate of Hewitt Services Australia is huge. So what we're doing is we're denying them access to things they paid for. I put my savings, my taxes, in some respects, are a savings on my future. I've been denied, and my energy and my efforts been reduced. The stored energy and efforts been reduced. Coming back to
Yep.
your example, where I'm now not only am I getting paid a pretty crappy pension, I can't get the access to the services that would supplement that pension. And that's even before we start talking about my aged care and the NDIS, which I'm becoming very versed in. I'm becoming very versed in. So these systems have been designed to make it more difficult for the average punter to access government energy, if you want to use it that way. The government's going to expend the energy to do what you would normally do, but you can't access it. And by the way, I'm not going to pay you enough and give you enough skill sets to access the stuff that you really need. So it's a really self-defeating cycle for someone who's either aged or got a disability. And I think that's what I would call institution. This is a really specific technical term out of my industry, institutional corruption, where the system's actually set up and they're doing it for the right purpose, but the system's set up to actually avoid delivering what they're supposed to be delivering.
Yeah.
And it's not that they're deliberately doing it. It's just that that's the way the system's been set up, and so it gets perverted from its main core. So Services Australia is there to make sure that you, the average citizen, gets the services they need from the government for which you're paying for. But in fact, the system's been built to divert you away from that and divert the Services Australia from delivering it. And that's hugely. It's a technical term. There's very few of us that actually fully understand and operate in that particular part of the field, but it's one that I actually did my master's thesis on, and out of that came some behaviours when you put it up against the thesis that we actually had government officials in Italy were looking at me going, we would have liked to have known this about 6 months ago because that actually answers a whole pile of problems we've got with corruption in Italy.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing here. We've got an organisation that's institutionally corrupt and it's been perverted. And the end result is that you, the average citizen, doesn't get the services that they need.
Or that
And
you're paying for, ultimately,
you're
have
paid for.
paid for with
You
your
pay for.
taxes.
So in
Yeah.
other words, you've been working a whole life to get to this point to get nothing.
Yeah. So you're just getting robbed and shortchanged, and just in another way, in an underhanded way that you just can't even see.
And I don't think people see this. I don't think the people who are doing it see it. I don't think the average Australian would see it.
No, no way. And generally, who's got the time, Mick? Everybody's under the pump trying to just make ends meet this week, living from paycheck to paycheck because of inflation and cost of living and everything like that. Like,
Yeah.
nobody's got the time to be able to try and look into this stuff, let alone make sense of it, and understand how it works and how it's actually affecting them and hurting them
Yeah.
financially.
And this is where it becomes, you can't explain that to government because government can't afford to. It's a bit like, don't tell me. If you tell me, then I know. I don't want to know because I can't. I know intrinsically inside. I think the government and politicians generally do know this is not right, but because they've had to build a thick skin to survive in a very adversarial political world, it's just another thing I can't deal with because my brain's only so big, can only put in so much input. I do know if I go in terms of the government's direct behaviour around, I think any of these governments have absolutely zero interest in tackling corruption. I think the integrity commissions that they've set up have been specifically designed to fail.
Yep.
Specifically, except for New South Wales and the ACT. And New South Wales, I think it was unexpected that they would succeed, but the ACT one was definitely set up to succeed. Definitely, and they've done a sterling job of it. Absolutely sterling job. South Australia was doing okay until they got actually neutered. They're taken into the vet, and that was it for them. They had no teeth and no nuts left. WA is good at reporting the problem, but not doing much about it. Queensland Crime Commission, who I've worked for, they're pretty deadly, I think. I think the QCCC is not too bad. I think they've got some teeth. But if you look, they have some internal limitations.
Okay.
Which you would have. But I don't think they're in the same boat as, say, IBAC in Victoria or the South Australian equivalent. And now New South Wales has also been neutered at the same time. But you have a look at the National Anti-Corruption Commission, all right? It can't investigate politicians.
Okay. Why?
Because the legislation says they're not allowed to investigate politicians.
Okay, so why was that legislation put in place and who advocated for such legislation?
Well, if you think about it, the politicians said we have the, internal integrity mechanisms and the AFP. So if we've done something so bad, the AFP should investigate us. Well, hang on a second. The Attorney General runs the AFP, so I'm kind of trying to figure out how that works for starters. But the National Anti-Corruption Commission was told specifically not to go for politicians. Right. So, my God, you only have to take a look at a couple of them and go, you might as well have a neon sign saying I'm corrupt flashing on my head.
Yeah.
but you're not allowed to touch it. So what I'll do is I'll set it up. I'll then put in a National Anti-Corruption Commissioner, and if you've been reading any of the news about him, and as you seen any of my LinkedIn comments, he has no background in corruption. He is a commercial judge, albeit a very good one, from the New South Wales Supreme Court. He worked in commercial law, not criminal law. This is a criminal law matter.
Yeah.
So why is he qualified to be the national integrity guy? What's his qualification for running a corruption investigation? Well,
I'd say probably nothing other than the fact of who he knows.
Now, he's the guy that did the war crimes inquiry. And so, therefore, I think it's a little bit of that. But if you look at the track record of this guy, what would you want to have as a corrupt politician? You want a National Anti-Corruption Commission that is absolutely toothless, led by a spineless person that will get nothing done. And their successes that they've touted over the last 2 years have been stuff that the agencies, because we used to do our own corruption investigations, and the AFP have completed. It's been nothing. The National Anti-Corruption Commission has not completed anything. And I know for a fact that, 3 years after I pulled out of an investigation because I got the shits with the agency, so this is the differential between a good investigator and a bad one. For 5 years, an agency had been investigating a corruption charge. For 3 years they've been investigating a corruption charge. 2 years with the AFP, who could got nowhere. 1 year with an internal agency investigator who could get nowhere, and then they brought me in. 2 weeks after I started, I filled out the charge sheet. I was ready to rock and roll. We'd executed some warrants and we had him nailed. Literally had this guy nailed. I could not have, there was nothing else I had to do. Took it to the DPP who accepted it. So we started filling out the forms, and then my contract ended and they refused to renew it.
So what is it, Mick? Do you reckon that situation there, like the time frames and what you achieved to the time frame that them two different departments spent working on the same case? What is it? Is it corruption in entities, or is it incompetence, or is it both? Because either one, you still end up with the same outcome. But why are people who are incompetent being put into positions to allow them really important establishments to fail?
I don't think it's incompetence. In this case, it was COVID got the AFP, and they did some work, but they hadn't, like most investigators in the corruption space, they don't go, what's the actual offence like any investigation, you go, here's the offence. These are the elements of the offence. How do I prove each one of those elements? That's the very first step any investigator has to do. In fact, I just had that conversation with a student who's drawn me out the wall. Once you do that, then what happens is, this is what I've got to find. You go looking for those things. Now, when I got the package given to me, I had it all there. They had it there. All they had to do was line up all the elements and go stick, 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 which I did. 2 weeks later, we're ready to rock and roll. I then did a lot of work in the digital forensic space, getting more emails and stuff out of it, and discovered a few other things that were going wrong and dealt with those. That's what slowed it down a bit. But the reason was it was getting too close to the bone, I think, for the agency itself, because it would show that they were not monitoring it properly. Okay, well, then lesson learned. But it then ended. I was pretty furious about it because I just thought this was deliberately done to push me out, which is fine. Just tell me to go. Don't muck around. Just go, Mick, we don't want you anymore, and I'll walk out the door. But there was an infuriating 6 months of maybe you want to consider this. We're thinking about that. We might bring you back in. Oh, and then when I said, no, I'm not coming back in because you guys have not got a contract with me, I'm not interested, they said, well, you've got to come back in anyway because you're obligated to. So there was this big battle, which I thought was kind of weird. It's now with that case is now with the National Anti-Corruption Commission. 5 years, in fact, nearly 6 years after it started, this case is still tooling around in the National Anti-Corruption Commission. I finished the report. It was all that in black and white. They're still tooling around on it. And this is what I'm saying, is that the agencies aren't prepared to put, for a range of reasons, A, they're not trained to do it properly. B, there's a skittishness around it because if I take you on, you might hit me back with a lawsuit and I don't want the visibility. And the minister doesn't want the visibility. And C, I might get into trouble if we find him guilty of something.
Yeah.
I was actually asked once to inquire, by a very senior member of the ADF to inquire into something, which I did. And halfway through, he said to me, why are you doing this? And I went, because you ordered me to. A pretty simple answer. And he went, it's just giving me a headache. I don't want to do it anymore. I said, well, it's too late. That bus has left the station. And I think that's part of it. I don't want the drama. Whereas, I don't know what's going on outside, but whereas from my perspective, I'm going, if you do not deliver on this, you'll never deliver on anything. You might as well just give them the checkbook and say, go and buy it yourself. Just don't take too much. That's how I feel when I now look at the National Anti-Corruption Commission. It was set up to fail, to allow the politicians to continue to do things that particular minister did with the water, who shall remain nameless. And having done that, then we're all like schmucks. Now, I've been calling for the sacking of the National Anti-Corruption Commissioner for about 12 months now. And I'm not alone on this. But a lot of people want to see him sacked because the robo-debt fracas, the fact that he was directed by the Attorney General not to continue to work inside defence or have anything to do with defence because he came out of defence, and he ignored him and did his own thing. He was directed to do something, and he went ahead and did it anyway, and then lied about it. He lied about it. He lied about robo-debt. He lied about his work with defence. And the question I would ask, if you were working with defence, what were they asking you to do? Because you got no special skills.
Yeah.
So what is you were doing inside defence that the Inspector General of the ADF, different to the Inspector General of Defence, the Inspector General of the ADF required you to come in and talk to them about something that's completed? Because in a normal inquiry, this is the bit I find weird. In a normal inquiry, I, the inquiry officer, complete the inquiry, hand the inquiry to the appointing officer, and I walk away. I never have anything to do with it ever again. That's the rules. But you guys are bringing him back in to answer questions. What's going on here? That breaks all the rules of inquiry. So this is one of the most corrupt figures I think we've had inside a National Anti-Corruption Commission. You know,
hard to get your head around, Mick, eh? Pretty wild stuff.
I could go on about it all day. There's a couple
mate, I bet you could. I bet it's just crazy, man.
Yeah. So one last thing I must tell you about on the $10,000. The reason why I used that example is my dad passed away a few years ago, and I said to Mum, "How's it going? Are you able to access the accounts?" And she said, "Oh yeah, I've got all access to the accounts. It's not a problem." But she said, "I haven't been down to the bank for months." Why is that? He said, "Well, Dad squirreled away $10,000. Every time he took $200 out, he took 50 and put it into a white envelope in his drawer." So she said, "I was going through his drawer, I found $10,000. So I can't spend that amount of money, so I'm just using it on the groceries at the present moment." So Dad hadn't been sitting there for must have been for about 5-6 years just building up this cash reserve. But so that's good. Yeah.
Good on him. Well, we're chaffing through here pretty good, Mick. We're starting to burn through the time, mate. A couple of other questions that might have to just hit on, and then we'll look at winding it up, I'd say, mate.
Yeah.
Just trying to choose which one to move into next.
No problems.
Actually, I think you covered a fair bit of it actually through there in what are some of the questions I was going to ask you, mate, in regards to it. So, you've worked extensively around government and procurement and whatnot. Where are the biggest vulnerability points that organisations consistently underestimate? And then, and how I guess even small business people could take from this to apply to their business to protect themselves from fraud and corruption.
I think the biggest vulnerability is not actually having systems in place.
They seem to have a lot of systems, but they don't seem to work very well, or they've been designed not to work very well by the sounds of it to me.
They are designed, and I probably agree they're not designed well, but people don't have systems in place, and then they think the system's in place, so therefore it works, and they never check it. So a system without someone checking what's happening inside the system ain't a system. It's just the biggest weakness people have is I don't check the pieces of my system. So the system for a small business is I advertise, you come to my house, to my shop, I sell you my money, I sell you something for your money, and then you leave. But no one checks what happens to the money that just goes into the till, and they think, oh, it's fine, it's in the till. But between advertising and them leaving with the goods in their hand, each one of those steps you could be ripped off as a small business, right? And the ripping off could be from your own team. So you have to check, and this is where I keep saying to small businesses, don't you check your bank account? And they go, nah. How do you run a business without checking your bank account on a daily basis? I had $100,000 there yesterday. I've got 20. What happened?
This will bring you to your knees pretty quick.
Oh yeah, it would, and that's what happens to a lot of small businesses. They don't watch the cash flow. Now you should watch your cash flow anyway as a small business. So nothing I'm asking you to do is any different, but just taking a different perspective is what does each one of these transactions mean, and who the F are you? That's one of the big questions. Who's this?
Yeah.
And that's where small business, one of the biggest weaknesses is not checking the system. It's one thing to have a system, but if you don't check it, that's the biggest vulnerability. And it's the same, it doesn't matter what scale, you can scale that right up to big business if you're not checking. Now, the difference is the scope of the problem In a small business, you're going to have to look after every aspect of it. But your risk profile is really small. There's only so many entry points that someone can get to you as a small business, because normally your product's quite narrow. As the business gets bigger and there's more moving parts, your internal vectors, the income is going to be far wider, greater, and more complex. But the checking's still the same. You check for anomalies. Now, I said this defence when I was in there. Oh, you did a probity check, did you? Yep. Contract's fine. And I said to them, what's the contract got to do with the probity check? And they said, well, we checked that the contract was compliant with the probity requirements. And I said, well, that's just a bootstrap defence. Have you checked, done a due diligence on the person that's got the contract with you? No. Do you know who the beneficial owner is? No. Have you done any checks on their bank accounts? No. Okay, well, maybe you want to have a think about that and go and have a check. So I was in a major project in which the development stage was being outsourced. So someone came along and said to me, can you just do a quick check that we've got all our act together? Anyway, I disappeared for 5 days, and I got an email, blistering email, saying, where are you? This is supposed to be done. It should only take an hour to fix. And I wrote back to him and said, well, mate, I'm on my third Cayman Island accounts just on the first contractor that you're looking at. And he said, Cayman Island accounts. I said, all their bank accounts, Cayman Islands.
Yep.
You've attracted all the cockroaches of the planet to this particular project. You have not got a real player. The beneficial owners all live in Florida. And he was horrified. Sole traders, they were trying to run a multi-billion-dollar contract. They were going to design it. They were just cockroaches on the outside. The money would have just gone out the door. Due diligence saved us millions because we went, hang on a second. No, the actual project got cancelled in the end because we couldn't attract the right people. So checking's really important. I would say to any small business, check. But as you get bigger, your threat boundary comes bigger. So therefore, hire someone to check for you, and then check the checker, obviously. But hire someone that's good at it. Hire someone that can come in and look at your system and go, where are your threat? Where's the threat? How big is your threat envelope?
Which would be somebody just like yourself, Mick.
Just like us. It's
like you, mate. And I guess, do you reckon to a certain extent you can build checking systems for the systems, but you would still then need somebody with expertise like yourself to come in and check over the top of it again?
Yeah, you'd have someone come in and do it. So that's what an auditor does. An auditor come in and check your system. Nobody buys an auditor in to do that, but that's what they should be doing. And the problem with it is that, and as I say to small business owners, they go, mate, I can't afford this. And I don't use the line, you can't afford not to. I'm saying if you don't check cash flow, you won't have a business. I'm happy to come in. Yeah, I'm happy to come in and check your cash flow for you to see where the money's going, but you can do it yourself. And it doesn't take long. It's an Excel, you put it in an Excel spreadsheet and sort it out. But unless you don't do it, your business is just going to die. Yeah. And another argument I use is you've got to spend money to make money in this space. So it could be a good 3 years ago that I bought You Met Aloysia, my VA.
Yep.
Jenna said, you can't do this yourself. I was losing customers left, right, and centre. And Jenna said, you can't do this by yourself, get a VA. Yeah, okay, so I went and got a VA, got a Aloysia. Because the reason why I picked her was that she was a mum with 4 boys. And I said, if you can run a business and you've got 4 boys, you're the one for me.
Good call.
Good call. And I thought I've got to pay her $800 a month. That's nothing in a business, and I don't have $800 a month, I don't think. Well, I've got $800 and then some, because she started to bring more business in.
Yeah.
I've just picked up recently an extra trainer. I'm bringing, because we need to focus on bringing the business in. So that's what I say to someone, bring a checker in for half a day to check your system once a year to make sure that you're not getting ripped off. Or have an automated part of the system that says that's not the right thing and flags it for you, so you go, I need to look at that now.
Yeah.
You might find that you're missing a customer payment, or the customer's paid twice. And customers love it when you go, you paid twice, I'll just put it onto the next month's bill or give it back to you. What do you want to do? It's that customer service thing. But if you're not checking, I can tell you right now, the angriest emails I get are about money every time.
Yeah.
But if you're not checking, and I think if you can see the anomalies, you understand your own business, you'll pick up the anomalies. That's the other big important part about it.
No, good
You know?
advice, mate.
So,
Real
yeah.
good advice, mate. Very important factor, especially in business, whether it's small or large, eh? You know, like
Yeah, absolutely.
stuff can start, disappearing, secretly disappearing, little cracks open up and them attack vectors and people get in and start siphoning stuff off, off of your cash flow and your hard work, blood, sweat and tears to build that business and scale it and grow it and provide the best service you can to customers. And then you've got something like that happening inside your own ranks and you don't even know about it. Like,
And you don't need it. I think if you go the old saying, most couples break up over finances. Yeah, most divorces come out of finances, and I think it's the same. Most businesses fail because of finances. Most arguments occur over finances. You know, when David Kavanagh tells the stories about him punting people from the course, from the conferences, it's always about money. They've come with a different expectation, and he's trying to be clear with them, poor bastard. And you know what David's like? He's such a lovely guy.
yeah,
He's trying to be clear with them, and next you know he's got a raging problem. It's all from the finance. It comes back to your comment that money corrupts.
yeah. Yeah, no, I believe it does. From my experience and understanding of how the system's designed, it it does, mate, and that's why I put my faith in gold and silver and tangible assets. Full
Yeah,
stop. Real estate and gold and silver. It's God's money. It's been here since the beginning of time. It'll be here till the end of time, and it cannot be inflated away. It takes somebody else's same amount of blood, sweat, and tears, energy, and effort, life force spent to dig that metal out of the ground and process it and turn it into a minted coin or a bar and that's equal to what amount of money it'll cost you to buy that and
Yep.
preserve your purchasing power from your time and energy spent in whatever line of work you were in.
Yeah, that's right. It's a
So it
fair and
evens
equitable
out.
trade. Yeah, fair and equitable trade. There's an interesting thing about what you're saying around use of energy, and I saw it the other day, and I knew about it, but I didn't take much time to think about it. But I've been thinking ever since. The ordinary person, the ordinary Australian, will go to work and they'll get a salary, and they'll be taxed on that salary, and they'll get a loan on their house, and that they'll be paying the bank back the loan, they'll be paying their taxes, and they'll slowly get ahead. If nothing goes wrong, they'll slowly go ahead. Some of our ultra rich don't do it that way. This is how they don't pay tax. What they do is they borrow the money to live on.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They borrow the money to live on because you don't get taxed on that money. So I go to the bank and give me 10 million bucks. I'm going to live off 10 million bucks this year because I've got all this cash in your bank and I've got all my business got all, and they live off that money and they never pay tax.
Yeah. This is what Robert Kiyosaki teaches. I don't know if you've heard of him, but
Yeah,
this is what he teaches, and that's how he's, made his phenomenal wealth that he has today. And um, it's a very interesting prospect to start learning about how you make that system work. And it's all about acquiring assets first and foremost,
yeah.
tangible assets,
So you
cash
think
flow
about
and tangible assets.
correct. So if you think about that, we go back to my example with the credit card. I was living on a loan. I'm going to pay off the living part that loan off, but I'm living on a loan. That's what he's suggesting in microcosm. Whereas these guys are doing it in macrocosm. They have no income.
Yeah,
They only have a loan. And you don't get taxed on money from a loan. So they have no income. And that's the differential between the average person who's been told their whole life, do not borrow money unless you're going to buy a house. Do not use money to buy food. Don't use borrowed money to buy food. Keep your loans down. Don't do this. And I'm sitting there going, well, in actual fact, if I die, there are no loans. The loan goes with me. Hey, here's a thought. And so we've been taught. This is what you said to me earlier on in the conversations we had in Bangkok over beers was we've been taught money the wrong way. Absolutely the wrong way. And that money, the way we've been is taught is that we're loaning our salary to the bank so they can make gazillions of us.
Yeah, mate, big time. And that's the thing, coming to understand the system, and it's so complex and designed to be that way, so that it confuses the bejesus out of you, and so you just throw your hands in the air and go, oh, well, this is just too hard.
Yeah.
I'll just go to work and earn me wages and pay me bills and pay me taxes and try my best to save and hope like Christ I can put enough together by the time I'm 65 or 70 that I can have some sort of retirement, but it's a debt-based system, and there's two different types of debt. There's good debt and there's bad debt, and we're not even taught that. The simple basis of that fact that there's good debt and bad debt, and good debt will cash flow for you, and bad debt is an ultimate liability that is just draining you all the time. But it comes down to education that you need to get for yourself to be able to understand this, so that you can do better in life, and you can get your money working for you instead of you working for your money.
And that's a commentary you hear all the time, is get your money working for you. But unless you understand the fundamental thing that's going on, is that I've loaned the money to the bank. I will get a loan back off the bank to live off. The idea of good debt and bad debt shifts in that paradigm around what's a good debt. For me, a good debt is absolutely correct. The one that builds capital and cash, therefore cash flow. But the other good bit is the good debt in which I waste it on stuff that I want because it's not a salary. You know what I'm saying? So I'm using my MasterCard to buy my groceries and then paying it off at the end of the month. I'm taking a bit of my loan back off the bank, drawing it on my loan to the bank. Hey, that gives you a different sense about how you operate in this world and how your money will flow through the different elements of your financial ecosystem, because we seem to think of us as part of a broader ecosystem, but we need to build our own internal financial ecosystem that says, I'm going to have bits of money here and the money's going to flow this way through my ecosystem. That's how you get money to work for you. Yeah. And there should only be inputs from outside, should be no outputs. If that makes sense. I should have no money going to any other bastard but the bastard I want that money to go to.
Yeah.
Taking total command.
Yeah.
In that sense, once you understand that, I think you've got a better grasp of your finances than you might have had in the past.
Yeah, well said, Mick. I agree totally, mate. And the thing is, it's such a big subject, and we've just never been taught anything about it at all, and there's so much to it. And like I was saying earlier on, taxes, our biggest cost in life, full stop. So you need to either be prepared to go and educate yourself around how our tax system works, or be prepared to find somebody who understands it and does it very well, and be prepared to pay them to help educate you and run that side of your finances for you, and help you along that road, as well as the education you need around money itself, how to run your money, Otherwise, money and his fool and his money are soon parted.
But the other thing too is it starts to run your life. You don't want the money to run your life. You want your money to help you run your life.
Yeah, that's right. Live life on your terms, and that's what I'm all about, mate. Building true wealth for freedom, for financial freedom, for time freedom, and ultimately for legacy, mate, to leave on for my children and grandchildren, so that you can get and build generational wealth, so it can go from there.
Correct. It's interesting you brought that up, because we're having that conversation right now. Now my mother is very pragmatic. There's 4 boys. You're getting a quarter. Shut up. I don't care about anything else that's going on in your life. That's what's going to happen. If you want to pay it up against the wall, that's your problem. I don't want to hear about it. Very pragmatically.
Yep.
Jana's mum's, on the other hand, is going, I want the grandkids to have my legacy through my kids. And her son, in fact, you're almost a spitting image of Mark. He's got the same hat too, mate. That's probably why.
Must be a good-looking bloke, eh?
He's a good-looking bloke. Yeah, he's a good one. He's down Narrabri way, runs one of the old soldier settlement properties down there. He's just gone, look, let's split it into 3 bank accounts for you, Mum, with each of our names on it, and so it's our problem. So when you die, it becomes our problem, and you don't have to worry about it. So this is really interesting about where I want my legacy to go. So I've got 2 boys, and they're getting 3/4 of the amount, split in half. The other quarter is actually going into a trust fund for the kids' education, the grandkids' education.
Yep.
And there's been lots of conversation about, because of our circumstances, there might be, some additional kids. And I just said, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant.
Yep.
The relevant part to this is that any of the grandkids that we have access to that account. We don't care how they got there. We just want to care that that's there. And you, the 2 adults, although I use that term loosely with my 2 boys, you 2 adults make the decisions about who accesses it. I don't care anymore after that. But this idea of legacy is really important for people now because they recognise the system's so broken.
Oh.
If they don't leave a legacy, these guys are in trouble. Our kids are in trouble.
Oh, well and truly. It's so like to have the chance to get to own a home for our children today, mate, let alone what it would possibly be like for our grandchildren. It's nigh impossible now, and that's just ridiculous, Mick. It just should not be the case. Should not be the case, mate. But that's how broken our system is, and how much wealth disparity there is between the ultra rich and you don't worry about the poor, but between the middle class. And what you were saying earlier on about middle class getting wiped out, that's exactly what's happening,
Correct.
And the middle class is the strength of any economy of any country.
Oh, absolutely. And if you look at the US economy, 90% of the wealth is held by 10% of the population.
It's mind-boggling, eh? It really is.
And so, from my perspective, that idea that we're all working, trickle down economy, it only trickles down and then stops. It doesn't actually trickle all the way down.
It don't trickle very far.
Yeah. And I've always argued that it should be a bottom-up economy. You give people money. So this is the thing. If I give you money to spend, all right, you'll spend it.
Oh, we can all do that easily, any amount of money.
Yeah, the business here will get that money because it'll trickle up to them, or in fact, if you put it side by side, it'll go that way to them, and they'll get their money, and they'll make a profit if I give it to you to spend. Now, some of you, God Lord, this annoyed Kevin Rudd, some of you actually went and banked the $900 I gave you back and paid off your mortgage, which is not what he wanted. He wanted you to put that $900 into the economy. Now, I asked this question of myself, right? So you talk about trickle-down economy, Kevin, and Malcolm, and Morrison, and everybody else. Trickle-down economy, give tax breaks to big business and it'll all come down to you. But the first time there's a crisis, I want you to spend, here's some money.
Yeah.
Why don't you do that? Why don't you cut my taxes? Because then I'll have more money to spend. Well, why are you cutting his taxes? Why is his company rate going down, but my taxes are staying up or going up? Give me more money because I'll generate it to push. And that's one of the things that we do in the corruption. One of the stuff that we've been doing in the corruption as well is saying to people, stop giving aid money to corrupt officials. Give it down to the lowest person so they can spend, which means that more money will filter up to the top.
Yeah. But it's not, the actual giving people money aspect doesn't work. That's the biggest problem. One of the biggest problems we've got. It's more to the point of allowing people to keep more money, their own money that they earn and work hard for.
Yeah, so say, why are you taxing me, mate? Yeah. I'm not the problem. Yeah. He's the problem. Yeah. And it comes down to that. You are taxing people to the point they can't survive. I've got GST. The whole idea of GST was we lower the tax rate, but that didn't work. I've got Medicare levy. It's not a tax. Okay. And at the same time, that GST, it's not 10%, it's more like 25% because it's coming down from the top. Every 10% gets layered on top of it. By the time it hits me, it's like 25, 30%. Yeah. So stop taxing me. I'll spend that money. Yeah. I'll spend it on private health insurance. I'll spend it on better living because better food comes from having more money. People that have a really good food lifestyle generally healthier.
Right.
Because we had a
The
nutritionist.
health is most important, because without good health, you can't have wealth of any kind.
No, and you can't. Well, if you're unwell, it's no good being a millionaire, but you're lying with kidney failure.
Yeah.
We had a nutritionist came in. Well, now Jen and I live a very, very healthy lifestyle. Ish. She came in and we told her what we ate, and she went, "Yeah, you don't need a nutrition plan. You're fine." But we spend a lot of money on groceries, healthy groceries. But we can afford to.
If you've got the money to spend, you can, like you said, Mick, you can live a better lifestyle, And if you live in a better lifestyle, ultimately healthier, you're going to be a much more productive citizen in society. Full stop. And you'll be happier, which in turn will make you be even more productive.
Correct. So why is it that healthy food is taxed more than unhealthy food?
That taxed more.
Yeah. Why is it more costly to have healthy food than unhealthy food?
Good question. Hey,
it's a really
that's a good one
question
there for you, the audience, to go out and do a bit of digging into that one.
Yeah. So why am I paying more for healthy food? Wouldn't we want to subsidise the healthy food? Why am I subsidising McDonald's? Why am I subsidising any of these major businesses?
Yeah.
The only thing I ever agreed with Tony Abbott on was stop subsidising the car industry. Because unknown to many, many people, the car industry had enough cash in reserve to last 20 years without a dollar coming in from profit.
That's pretty impressive, eh?
Yeah, that's
Good
the
business.
US. That's the worldwide global business has enough cash reserves, they can outlast anybody. So why am I subsidising these people? I'm paying my taxes to you so they don't have to pay taxes, so I get to pay extra for a car 3 times over in 3 different ways. Why am I doing that? And that's where money corrupts.
Yep, 100%, Mick, 100%. I guess we'll have to look at wrapping it up, Mick. I could talk to you all day, mate. And
I love this. This is the place I love playing.
Yeah, mate, you and me both. Like I've learned a lot off this conversation with you today, and I hope our audience has too. And I'd imagine they will have if they've been listening. And just going forward on now, mate, and we'll look at wrapping up. Can you direct people in regards to where they can find you, and or give yourself a bit of a plug there, mate?
Yeah, so look, we do a range of things. We do a lot of training here in Australia, and we do a lot of training in Eastern Europe as well. But on top of that, we provide a range of integrity services for people to access, things like checking their cash flow, checking their businesses in their systems, building fraud control and integrity control systems for small businesses and small to medium businesses. We also do investigative service. We'll come in and do investigations for you. Into things like fraud, corruption, and even workplace issues as well. We've done a few of those over the years. So you can find us at www.afca, that's Alpha Foxtrot Charlie Alpha, .edu.au, and we've just got a little contact button there. You hit the contact button and we'll get an email, and be lovely to hear from people, actually. But this is a passion play for us. So if you want someone that's passionate, and we're actually really good at what we do, have a chat to us. Be more than grateful to help.
Yep. I sure hope some people reach out to you, Mick, because I'm sure there's plenty out there who could utilise your services and your knowledge and your skill set around these subjects, mate.
Yeah, no worries.
Completely invaluable.
And thank you for having me on, Bully, because I've actually enjoyed it. I've had a good afternoon doing this, and I always love talking to you and Evelyn. So, look, give my best to her as well, and good luck. I think this is going to be a great podcast, and I think you're going to get a really good business out of this one.
Awesome, Mick. Really appreciate it, mate. And give my love to Gina too, mate, please.
Will do. Cheers, buddy.
All right, mate. We'll see you in the future.
You will do.
This has been another episode of the Rodney Bull Show, a Rebel Edge production. Please share with your family and friends, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review.